From humanity's oldest myths of gods and monsters to modern-day men of steel, we've told stories of individuals with incredible abilities facing overwhelming odds. Their triumphs inspire us to better ourselves, to achieve more. Legends, superheroes. When did these figures first grace the silver screen? Today, I want to look at a landmark historical epic film which created a heroic strongman named Maciste, who would go on to star in 26 sequels in the silent era alone, and continue to appear in Italian films into the 1960s. This is 100-Year-Old Movies. Cabiria is a 1914 Italian historical epic film set during the Second Punic War between Carthage and Rome. Directed by Giovanni Pastrone, it mixes the ancient history of Rome recorded by Titus Livius with French novelist Gustave Flaubert's book Salammbô and the swashbuckling tales of Italian author Emilio Salgari. It featured innovations in cinematography and special effects, notably the extensive use of a dolly to create traveling shots, allowing for not just lateral and vertical movements, but to move into and pull out from the action as well. For years, these would be referred to in the business as Cabiria shots. The special effects, or trick photography as they called it then, was likely the contribution of filmmaker Secondo di Chaumont, whose early work had been compared to George Méliès. The impressive shots of the erupting Mount Etna and the ritual sacrifice to Moloch are highlights of early silent-era effects. Without a doubt, it inspired the later epics of D.W. Griffith and Cecil B. DeMille. Martin Scorsese, in his introduction to the restoration of Cabiria shown at the 2006 Cannes Film Festival, argued that many technical aspects often attributed to Griffith and DeMille's films actually should be credited as innovations of Pastrone's Cabiria. In addition to technical aspects, its historical significance has been largely overshadowed as well. For instance, Griffith's The Birth of a Nation is often cited as the first film shown in the White House, but President Woodrow Wilson had Cabiria screened a year earlier on the White House lawn. The distinction here is that The Birth of a Nation was shown inside the White House, while Cabiria was shown outside. That seems like splitting hairs to me. I think Americans just wanted to be able to say that the first film shown in the White House was an American film, not a foreign film. So they tweaked the language to write history the way they wanted. Nothing new there. So let's get into the movie itself. The general course of the story sees Cabiria, a young girl separated from her family by the eruption of Mount Etna, set to be sacrificed to the god Moloch, but is rescued by Roman spies Fulvius and Maciste. Let's see how I can consistently say Maciste or Maciste. I'm not entirely sure how it's supposed to be pronounced. Bear with me. Fulvius escapes back to Rome. Maciste is captured. And Cabiria is raised as a servant to an aristocrat. Years later, Fulvius returns to rescue both Maciste and Cabiria as the city falls to Rome. There are two issues I want to address here before I go any further. First of all, it makes no sense to me why this film is called Cabiria. She's barely a supporting character. The two times she has anything to do with the plot is when she's rescued as a child and when she's rescued again as an adult. Her actions at no point drive the story forward. Oh, and at the end, it seems she's romantically involved with Fulvius. You know, the adult man who rescued her for the first time when she was a child. Apparently, the title and character names came from Gabriele D'Annunzio. You might notice his name prominently in the promotional posters for the film. Originally, he was assigned to write the script, but took so long, the filmmakers grew impatient and went on without him. Besides naming the characters, he also wrote the intertitles for the film. That seems to be the extent of his credited contribution. He didn't direct the movie, produce it, write the script. It isn't based on his original work, yet it gets promoted as if it were his creation. Why is that? As far as I can tell, he was a prominent literary and political figure in Italy at the time, so having his name on the poster was a good way of bringing attention to it. This is like some instances today where someone gets an executive producer credit because their name ultimately helps sell the movie, regardless of how limited their actual involvement is in its creation. The second issue I need to bring up is something which will glaringly stand out to any modern viewer. Maciste is a white man portraying a black man using makeup to darken his skin in what's known as blackface. This was common practice back then and for a long while in film history. What's weird here is that there's no narrative reason for the character to be black. He's referred to as a servant of Fulvius in the film's intertitles, but he wouldn't have to be black for that to be the case. Outside the intertitles, they act more like friends and equals, and the intertitles were written separately from the script, so that may have come about after it was shot. From what I read, making the character black was the idea of actor Bartolomeo Pagano, who played the part. When the character took off, because it's clear to anyone even today that he's by far the most interesting part of the movie, Pagano continued to play the character throughout many silent era sequels. Although after a couple films, they dropped the blackface and had the character appear with Pagano's natural skin color. This makes Maciste the only character I've ever come across that went from blackface to whitewashing. Now let's see what made this character so awesome that he'd surpass the popularity and legacy of the movie he was created for, becoming, I believe, cinema's first superhero. We first see Maciste and Fulvius in this dynamic seaside shot. Maciste is right in front, with that toga blowing in the wind, looking regal, his massive muscles tensed. He barely has to move at all, yet he looks ready to burst into action at any second. This figure doesn't look like a servant to me at all. Bodyguard, maybe. Which is why I think that detail came about later. They are spies. Although, other than being in Carthage, I'm not sure what their objective is. They meet this innkeeper who's going to become something of an unwilling aid to them until he betrays them. Is it betrayal if you go to the authorities and say, hey, these guys are holding me hostage and they're foreign spies? I'm gonna say not. But he's the bad guy, don't worry about it. Cabiria, meanwhile, escapes the spectacular eruption of Mount Etna with her nursemaid. The high priests take her because they're looking for children to sacrifice to Moloch. As you do, the nursemaid is punished for trying to resist. She runs off and hides, but overhears Maciste and Fulvius, figures out that they're Romans, and asks them to save Cabiria. The Temple of Moloch is one hell of a set. This had to be an influence on later epics like Intolerance, Ben-Hur, and the Ten Commandments. And this playset has interactive features, like Moloch's chest opening for them to load the kids into. The chest closes, the kids slide down into the flames, and the statue belches fire. Disclaimer, this film contains simulated child sacrifice. A replica of this baby-burning statue can be viewed at the National Museum of Cinema in Turin. Another replica greets visitors to the Colosseum. But before Cabiria can get Kali Mad, Maciste and Fulvius snatch her away. The priests give chase, which doesn't work out for them. Maciste picks one up and tosses him off the tower like a pro wrestler. The next one goes into the fire of that oversized chalice. They make their way down the face of the building. If the impressive facade seems familiar to you, as it did me, that's because it inspired the scene in Fritz Lang's Metropolis where the machinery turns into Moloch. Yup, the same monster deity from this film, suggesting that the workers are being sacrificed. Our heroes hide back at the inn, forcing the innkeeper to help them, literally twisting his arm. Hannibal? No, the other one. There we go. Hannibal marches his troops to Rome. Meanwhile, our heroes lie in wait, for the heat to die down. Two spies deep in enemy territory have to take care of a little girl. That really sounds like the premise to an 80s comedy. Introducing a rich lady and her pet jaguar. Because it's 1914 Italy, so sure, let's just have a jungle cat loose on the set. The innkeeper sneaks around to tip off the priests about the whole spies situation. As our heroes head out, planning to warn Rome of Hannibal's attack, they run straight into an ambush. Fulvius takes a leap of faith. Maciste, with Cabiria, ducks into a garden, breaking up a tryst between the rich girl and some important guy. He pretty much shoves Cabiria into her arms as she's trying to get away. The guards catch him. Or catch up to him anyways. They're too afraid to touch him. As they should be. He willingly surrenders himself, giving the rich girl time to get away with Cabiria. His defiant walk with his arms crossed makes me think he could escape if he wanted to. They chain him to a millstone. Yet even captive, they're scared of him. As they should be. Look at him. He could break any one of them in half if they got within reach. Instead of getting to work, he shows how undefeated he is by taking a seat on the millstone. The little yawn he gives at the end of the scene is a nice touch. Fulvius catches a ride in a boat. I guess he wasn't up for swimming back to Rome. Maciste could have done it. Eventually, they do get Maciste to push that millstone. In another round of Where Do I Know That From?, this scene inspired writer-director John Milius to have the character Conan push a millstone in his 1982 movie Conan the Barbarian. The innkeeper drops by to mock Maciste's misfortune. He should have been quicker on his feet. Some stuff happens with the war as the years pass. They do the Archimedes death ray bit, and it works better here than it did on the show Mythbusters. Some ambitious special effects work here. Although the ships read as models, the matte effect used to make it look like people are on the burning ships is surprising and interesting. Fulvius was on one of those ships. Somehow he washes ashore despite being dressed in armor that would have sunk him. He's sent again to infiltrate Carthage, gaining entrance to the city by means of a human pyramid, a stunt they thought so impressive they put it on the poster. I don't know. It looks silly to me. It's like something a bunch of college kids would do. Fulvius heads to the inn to find out what happened to his friend Maciste, much to the chagrin of the innkeeper. I almost feel sorry for this guy. Almost. Fulvius gives him the choice of being either threatened or paid. Some choice. All these years, Maciste has been chained to the same spot. His old friend Fulvius drops in to break him out. It's the moment Maciste has been waiting for. Maciste flexes his superior strength to free himself from bondage. That's a superhero moment. Fulvius tries to file through the shackle around Maciste's waist, but Maciste ends up pulling it apart barehanded. Okay, maybe the filing helped a little. The innkeeper is so shocked at seeing Maciste free again, he faints. Oh wait, it's worse than that. He died of fright. Maciste's mere presence is enough to strike a man dead. Superpower! And that's her cue to get the heck out of ancient Dodge. But what about Cabiria? She's an adult now, still a servant of the rich girl, and getting inappropriate advances from the high priest. On the run in the desert, Fulvius gets tired. Maciste spies a military camp burning in the distance and figures that's their best chance of survival, which is a deep level of desperation. Hey, those soldiers over there are on fire. Maybe they can help us. So he tosses Fulvius over his shoulder and heads for the hills. They get captured by Certans. Are you sure? Yes, I'm certain. Now held prisoner in the city of Cirta, Cabiria brings them water. They don't know it's her, and she doesn't know they're the same guys who saved her as a kid. She's just showing mercy to the poor prisoners because it's important to establish to the audience that she's a good person. Like any good superhero, Makiste bends steel with his bare hands to make his escape. Meanwhile, the rich girl has a bad dream about Moloch and tells the priest that Cabiria is the girl who got away. So once again, she's scheduled for a human sacrifice. Makiste sees the priest who put him on the millstone, briefly turning this film into a revenge plot. This is right as they're dragging away Cabiria. Makiste breaks in on the priest who's holding a struggling Cabiria down on a bed. You can do the math where that was going. Makiste rescues the damsel in distress for the second time in her life. Fulvius decides to get in on the action and arrives just in time to... He actually doesn't do anything useful. In a serious miscalculation, Makiste pulls Fulvius to safety instead of the girl he just rescued, who is again captured for the damsel gang captured hat trick. Luckily for our boys, they've barricaded themselves in the wine cellar. As Romans sack the city, they get drunk off their asses. The story winds down at this point. Once out of the cellar, Fulvius asks the rich girl to free Cabiria. Rich girl says she's dead, except then she drank some poison, and as she dies, she reveals that Cabiria is being held in the dungeon. Makiste is reduced to a gopher and background scenery for the rest of the film. As previously stated, Fulvius and Cabiria end up together for some unfathomable reason. And we get one last neat special effects shot to close the picture. It's a pretty nice shot for what it's worth. If, like me, you see this film and you find yourself asking why Makiste isn't the main character, well, you're in luck, because they made a bunch more films all about his exploits. Pagano returned as the character the following year in the self-titled Makiste film. He would star in at least one and as many as 5 films every year afterwards until 1927's The Giant of the Dolomites. These weren't sequels in the sense that we think of them today. While the character remained consistent, with plots generally centered around him taking down evil aristocrats, like a Hercules of the people, there wasn't any kind of attempt at a strict continuity. Makiste stories could be set anywhere and any time, from the ancient world to the modern day. The tone could range from fairly realistic to pure fantasy. This flexible interpretation is interesting for a serious character. Unfortunately, it also meant the character could be easily appropriated for propaganda. In the mid-20s, he became a symbolic figure of the fascist movement, even being made to somewhat resemble Mussolini. But he's best remembered for these sword and sandal heroic epics, known in Italy as the peplum genre. This would lead to a revival of the character in Italian films in the 60s. The success of the Italian Hercules film in 1957, starring American actor Steve Reeves, spurred on a new wave of peplum films. From 1960 to 1965, Makiste appeared in 25 films. He'd be played by several actors this time around, but most frequently by Mark Forrest. When these films were dubbed into English, however, most of them renamed Makiste to a strongman character more common outside of Italy. He'd become Hercules, Samson, Goliath, Atlas, Ulysses, or Colossus. Fans of Mystery Science Theater 3000 might have seen the show riff on Makiste under the titles Colossus and the Headhunters, or Hercules Against the Moon Man. By the mid-1960s, the peplum genre faded with the rise in popularity of spaghetti westerns. The final 2 Makiste films were made in 1973 by cult Spanish filmmaker Jess Franco. These were Makiste versus the Queen of the Amazons and the erotic exploits of Makiste in Atlantis. The first was released as a Tarzan imitation, and the second had a version with pornographic scenes edited into it. The character has not been revived since, nor does it seem likely that he ever will. Italian filmmakers today aren't making peplum films. The character doesn't have much significance outside of Italy, and I don't see any reason for them to revive a character with such a complicated history when they could much more easily create a new one. But you never know. Maciste is a character of superhuman strength, but still a man who fought for the people. He recalls the figures of ancient myth, but was created in the 20th century. His adventures are told across a long-running series of films, with the character being reinterpreted in different times. He's something of a step between mythology and modern-day superheroes. And I'm going to make the argument that he's the first cinematic superhero. I'm Movie Cyclops. Thank you for watching this video and supporting my endless fascination with movie history. If you have any feedback, please share that with me in the comments. I always appreciate reading messages related to my work or the movies I discuss. If you like, you can now follow my Instagram and Threads accounts where I post additional material. More information in the description below.